Okay, so I'm realizing now my title is probably a little too complicated, and I should have just summed this up simply as how community college students can address global crises. That probably would have been a cleaner title. But, I wanted to try to include everything, what we're doing. So, I'm Professor Wayne Warwick. I teach at Passaic County Community College. And I oversee the program at Biological and Physical Sciences Department. We teach a whole slew of physics at each level, algebra-based and the calculus-based, and we also have astronomy. And what we do is, as part of it's a collaboration. It's part of an NSF grant, a multi-year NSF grant. And we work with regional, and I say regional, it's not actually just New Jersey, it's also some of the southern New York schools and downstate New York. And we collaborate on challenges, and it varies year to year. For the past few years, a professor at Rutgers, Professor Alex Gates, came up with this idea of what we call the systemic challenge. And it's a STEM competition where we find some global crisis and we have our students try to address this. But what makes this interesting is it's not just community colleges. I mean, sure, we participate, a lot of county colleges, particularly regional ones, participate. But the exciting thing about this challenge is it's also 4U universities. There's actually no limit to who can participate. So we have Rutgers University and NGIT, which are both 4-year research universities. I believe 1 year Columbia also participated. So anyone is open to participate in this, as long as they're within the northern New Jersey, New York region. And with that said, participation has actually been really good the past couple years. This is how long I've been involved in this. I participated last year and then again just this past March. And participation has been pretty good overall for the smaller community colleges. And the interesting thing to notice is that though the participation is, you see the activity, you see the real competitive spirit in the 4-year schools. I mean, you really see them get into this, and whereas at the county colleges, it actually makes the students quite nervous. And very often you have it where these students will actually drop out last minute. They're just too nervous to compete up against Columbia and NYU and CUNY and Rutgers. So what I want to try to show is what we've done in the past 2 years that not only allowed us to stay in the competition, but to everyone's surprise, win against all of these other 4-year schools. And 2 years in a row, mind you, this is unprecedented. So the 4-year colleges are wondering, what are they doing? How could a county college beat out an R1 research school? Matter of fact, one of our schools in North Jersey, Montclair, we beat out 4 of their teams 2 years last year and 2 teams this year, and they're probably scratching their heads. How is this possible? How could this possibly work? So that's what I want to talk about today. How could students at a community college, the underdogs, compete and win against major research schools when it comes to these, global competitions? So just a quick summary of what exactly is this systemic challenge. So over the past 2 years, each year is a different topic. In 2021, the challenge was, how can we bring clean, potable water to global communities in need? And that's the challenge, and there's very other little details. It's a very creative and innovative approach for students. There's a lot of, liberal approaches they can take. And ideally, this competition would, the idea would take place in a third world country or region that is in desperate need of clean drinking water. It could also be within the U.S. Obviously, we know there's cities that are in desperate need for clean drinking water. And with that said, there was a lot of creative ideas. There was a lot of teams that participated that year. That year was a particularly large year. I think there was 12 universities that participated, the majority of which were the 4-year colleges. So we had a lot of competition. And a lot of innovation, a lot of, resources went into all of these different ideas. And just this past year, this past March, the competition for 2022 was sea level rising. And how could we deal with, stopping or at least alleviating or even dealing with coastal communities that have sea level rising, right? And that was a much broader competition because there's so many different aspects to sea level rising. Do the students want to get involved with what causes it, or just to kind of, deal with remedies for coastal communities that are already suffering? So that was a very broad topic. Now, typically, each will there's multiple teams. Montclair University, which is in north central Jersey, has typically a couple of teams each year. For us, though, we've always just had one team, and we would call ourselves the Panthers. So on this slide, what I have here is the topic that was delivered to us. And typically, these are sent out as flyers from the collaboration. The collaboration is a mixture of NSF and B2B, which stands for Bridge to the Baccalaureate program. And once we have these topics, and there's usually a website that kind of links us to some more minor details of the program. So in red, I have the topics that were given to us. And what follows is basically what they're asking for. So for example, how to deliver clean potable drinking water. We can deal with this from the perspective of chemical contamination, bacteria, agricultural runoff. So it's pretty liberal with what subtopic we decide to go with. And spoiler alert, yeah, we won first place. Beating out 12 or I believe 13 other colleges. And this was a surprise. It was our first ever win. Usually the community colleges did not do so well in these competitions. It was just there for the benefit of the students, just to give them experience. That's really how we marked it. So when we participated the second year for us, 2022, we thought to ourselves, there's no way we're ever going to win this again. No one has ever won 2 years in a row, especially for a topic that is so serious. And this is a hot topic, right? This is a very trendy topic, how to deal with sea level rise. We just thought the four-year schools are just going to, take home the victory. And it was a very broad topic, and I'll talk about the difficulties we had trying to essentially narrow this down to something specifically we could address. But to everyone's surprise, we won again. And it's not so much just a victory for our community college, but it should be a victory for any community college. That if we can do this, any community college can do this. We have the students and we have, the resources and the faculty to advise and guide these students to compete in any kind of global competition. So what I wanted to start off with is, what kind of disadvantages do community college students have? Because, the students that we have, they're very practical minded people, right? They're very pragmatic with everything they do. And I wanted to highlight what makes us the underdog. And this can go for a kind of a generic county college, not necessarily just us. And to start off with, and this is actually really important because, the four-year schools, when dealing with a competition that does require eventually prototypes and going on to actually become entrepreneurs, there's actually a business venture side to this in the end if you win. We thought the four-year schools would just take home victory because they have all these resources. They have the equipment, they have the labs, they have the spaces. We, of course, have this, but just to a much more limited extent. Our labs are smaller, we have less equipment. In many of these prototype designs, it's very difficult to actually kind of cobble together how we actually create these mechanisms, whereas that it's more easily to do at the four-year colleges. Another thing, and this is actually, I wouldn't say an unfair advantage because it just kind of creates that environment of competition, but our students have only been in college at 1, maybe 2 years at most. Maybe they're just ready to graduate. But our competitors at the four-year schools could be any year with an undergraduate, freshmen all the way up to seniors. So that creates a pretty distinct dichotomy, is that, we have students who've only taken 20 or 30 credits and they're just finishing their first year, compared to four-year students who they're ready to graduate as a senior with a bachelor's degree. So that's a pretty, significant difference. Our students have limited laboratory experience. And, the concern with that is eventually they have to actually have a real working design. And this is going to be very important for them, is that if they have limited laboratory experience, that's that additional handicap that they have compared to their four-year competitors. Many of our students, and this is why it's very hard to recruit, they just shut down when you mention competition. And when you tell them the details that, hey, you're going up against research schools and big four-year schools, they usually just want to stay out of this, and it makes them very nervous and very reluctant to actually want to go forward with this. And we find this, even with our past 2 years, we found this, one of the major roadblocks for us. There's limited space to work at many county colleges. If it's a suburban county college, this may not be so much the case, but we are at an urban county college, and on our main Patterson campus, there's really one big building. And there's very limited space to work. So if they're trying to meet and collaborate and brainstorm, that limitation is going to really hinder, their possible competition. And naturally, we don't have many students. A school like Rutgers or NJIT, they have 30, 40, 50,000 students, and recruitment is no big deal, right? You got a whole slew of students waiting to sign up. At our school, we don't have that many students. It's 5,000 or 6,000 students, and there may be only a handful that are actually prepared to actually start doing some kind of competition, where they've taken class and they're actually ready to go to that next level. So we have very few students. It's going to be very difficult to deal with, trying to cobble together teams. Advantages that county college students have. So the first off is multidisciplinary collaboration. And, we have engineering students and computer science and biology. They're all working together. They're in the same room. We're on the same Zoom sessions, right? We're taking, we're sharing faculty. We're in the same classrooms together, all working together, unperturbed by the fact that they're in completely different fields. And I guess it depends on the four-year college, but there are some schools like Rutgers, New Brunswick, they're so large, you may not even be on the same campus. And it's very likely that the engineers don't want to communicate with the biologists, and the biologists don't want to communicate with the physicists, and you just don't have that collaboration, and they're just not going to work together at the same level, right? So that is a big advantage for us. And our students, particularly at an urban county college, they have really good time management skills. And this is really one of their strong points. So many of them work. Many of them have multiple jobs. Many of them are parents, right? So they're dealing with their children. They're dealing with maybe their own parents, right? Maybe they're a caregiver. And they commute, and a lot of our students do not come from the county. They may come from 2 or 3 counties over. And we even have visiting students. Our college is very popular, apparently, at getting students from other states. I'm not really sure if other county colleges have that. But they may not even be in the same state, and they're with us through Zoom, or maybe they can only attend, very few of the meetings. We have incredible diversity. This goes for a lot of the colleges on the East Coast where we are. But what makes this important is that if we're dealing with a global crisis, there's a very good chance that within our group we'll have a student from that country. So, for example, we brainstorm some ideas of where to try to have potable drinking water. And we finally decided hey, let's do Peru, because one of our students was from Peru. And then we're thinking about, well, what about maybe West Africa? Hey, one of our students is from West Africa. So wherever we find the global crisis, there's a very good chance one of the students in that team will have experience with that particular country and knowledge of the crisis. And that really acts to their advantage. And of course, this goes for most county colleges, very much unlike the four-year schools, is we have a really a small number of students in each classroom, so the faculty to student ratio is fantastic. Especially early on in college, freshman and sophomore year, at the big schools, 1, 2, 300 students in a class, you don't get to know your faculty. We all know it's completely different at a county college. You get to know the faculty. And with that said, when they go to act as an advisor in that kind of guiding role, you're going to have that one-on-one approach with county college faculty, which the four-year schools, the faculty may not be able to do that. They just may not have the time. Another thing, and I say this a lot to my students, and they're aware of it as well, because many of them are visiting from four-year colleges, is absolute no disrespect to the four-year colleges whatsoever. But those faculty at community colleges typically have a lot of industry experience. We either come from industry or we've worked in industry, so we have a lot of, very extensive industrial experience. And for these competitions, it's all about practicality. Is this going to be practical for this impoverished region in the world? Can the people implement it there? And can you actually sell this and market it if you do decide to actually become entrepreneurs with this? So it has to be very practical. And lastly, and this is especially so at a county college, the students want to absolutely make sure that everything they're learning in the classroom can be applied to real-world applications. A lot of them are not going into research. A lot of our students are not going into have a theoretical background. They are going to be working with their hands. They're going to get very practical jobs in industry, hopefully as soon as possible for many of them. So they want to know that whatever they're doing has real-world applications, and this competition is exactly what they need. So if we kind of just crunch all these together, what it leads to is outstanding innovation. And in this particular, the past 2 years, I was the co-advisor for the competition. I shared advising responsibilities with another faculty at our college. And for every one of these competitions, when the competition was held, we got to see what every other college was offering. What it typically is that everyone presents at a conference-like event. So they go through a PowerPoint presentation, and we get to see their ideas and what kind of innovation they bring to the table. And it was very obvious when we competed, the innovation was outstanding. The ideas they had were outstanding relative to what we saw from the other competitors, for a variety of different reasons. And with that being said, the reason I put we won and then repeat is we won the competition again for the second year, and this was to everyone's surprise. Matter of fact, I remember when it happened, I honestly thought the email was a mistake. I was like, nah, it's just a mistake. It's probably last year. That's a mistake. And then it's like even a week later, we're like, we won again? Really? I didn't know that was even a thing. I just can't imagine how that was possible. I mean, not that I had doubt in our students, it's just that I didn't think we'd be able to do this again. So what I wanted to try to do is present the model that we used and the model that other county colleges can use for any kind of competition, whether it be regional or international or global as we have. With that being said, the hardest part of these competitions was recruitment. I mean, we would actively, go into the classrooms and at one point almost have to plead with the students that we need a team. And it was very difficult for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned. They know their time management, they're very busy, and a competition like this is going to take up too much time from their lives. Which is why that even once we created the team, there was constant flux. We'd have 8 people on a team, 2 would drop, 1 would be added, and the situation would happen in one case up until 2 weeks before the competition. So we're over here biting our nails because we don't have a stable team, even just 2 weeks before the competition, which is significant because we are only given about 2 months. So this was really critical for us to have recruitment as early as possible and to try to stabilize that recruitment as much as possible. And one of the things we tried to do, and it was a learning experience for me and my co-advisor, is we have to encourage these students. A lot of our students have the mindset of the underdog. I shouldn't be in a competition like this. I don't have what it takes. We had to encourage them that even if you lose the competition, you still get the experience, right? We really had to encourage them. And we had to motivate them. And the incentive was not only to possibly win the competition or maybe get second or third place, there's 3 placeholders, but even if you just get the experience and maybe you're asked to come back for another competition in the years to follow, it looks good on your CV. So we try to motivate them. And then once we encourage them and motivate them, we have to keep them in the team. Because, down to the wire, if there's only 4 or 5 of us, students that is, in the team, we can't lose anyone else. There's a presentation, there's a talk writing on it, and there's an entire idea behind this that we just cannot lose, these students. One thing that would scare off a lot of students, and because I'm a physics instructor, I take blame for this. This is my fault. The rigor. I have to be honest with them. I can't just talk about, everything's going to be good, it's going to be fun. I have to let the students aware that, look, this is a very technically demanding competition. The judges are physicists, they're chemists, they're going to be biologists, they all have their PhDs, they're faculty from a variety of different colleges. They will ask you questions. You have to know what you're talking about. And I remember when I first told the students this, the very next week when we met, half the team was gone. And I probably scared them away. That was not my intention. But even though we try to encourage and motivate them and keep, these students, we have to let them know that this is a real-world competition and the stakes are very high and they have to be technically prepared for what's going to happen. And those that remained in our team were up for that challenge, and it really shows. In our role, we guide them, we advise them. We really can't do that much for them at all. The technical research, the literature review, the building of the prototypes, the presentation is all on them. The talk is completely on them. We would have dry runs. We would offer them pointers. We would try to locate maybe where to find specific topics or publications that they can use to get these, research ideas. I was especially good with trying to keep everything pragmatic. We would use our technical. It was me. I'm a physicist, and then we had a microbiologist, and we would try to guide them in the right direction and tell them when, something's going to work or no, this is completely technically unsound. So we were there for them. And all the teams were required to have advisors. So this wasn't unique to us. Every college had faculty advisors. So with that being said, the end result was fantastic. We used this model. Now, I didn't go in with this model. I went into this with a blank slate. I was just called in to be an advisor because they wanted somebody from physical science. And after doing the first year, I said, you know what? I think there's a model forming. I've learned from my mistakes. I know what we should and shouldn't do. And then we use this model for the second time around, and I formally pieced together the model, and it works, right? So I think that this could be applied to any community college. I don't even think I took a breath. That was a whole complete 30 minutes of just me talking. Any questions? Is everyone here county college faculty? I don't want to trash you in any four-year college. I don't want to do that. Make sure we're all here at a county college. So there's actually some sad news. This competition, it may be the end of the run for the competition. This may have been the last year. The reason why, I don't want to get into rumors or gossip, but let's just say that four-year colleges are really unhappy that a county college beat them out. So this may be the last year because they're technically in charge of the NSF grant. So that's actually a very interesting perspective that they would take.
So can you tell us any more about what did they come up with for potable water?
So we came up with a filter design. It was a 5-stage carbon-based filter, but we had to use materials that were indigenous to the region. So, for example, we used duckweed and moss. because in the region of Peru, as informed to us by our students from Peru, duckweed and moss were extremely common in the agricultural societies. And when, not me, but the microbiologists look further into this, they advise our students to read up on this and follow up. And they actually found publications, I believe it was in West Africa though, where they successfully used moss and duckweed to filter water. The filtration mechanism is very similar to that of a multi-stage carbon filter. The students, however, discovered that the moss and the duckweed are not enough. It's good for large sediments and particulates that you may find in farming society, but we did have to also have it was a two-stage carbon filter, typical to what you might have around the home, like a Brita filter. And then what we did is, because these people were essentially on their own, they really can't have, they can't go to the store and buy replacement filters. We have to make our design extremely robust, and this also includes real-time sensors. The people in this particular area, they do have cell phones. So right now the students are working on an app that actually have real-time sensors. We use biosensors on the filters at the final stage to then indicate to the app the TDS, the total dissolved solids of the water, and the biological contamination of the water. So they know basically if it's clean enough to drink.
Cool.
And it was another thing with these designs. Again, I'm not trashing. Is anyone here from Montclair, Rutgers? Okay. So let me give an idea of why, and this I think goes for any county college. Our ideas were portable, easy to set up by the people who live in these communities, and inexpensive. Some of the ideas, and I praise them for their creativity, but some of the ideas they had were a $35 million filtration project as part of the water system. Well, $35 million is going to be a little pricey in some of these countries, and the judges saw that too. The judges they appeared to be very practical people. The reason that I like this competition is that the judges were from a whole mixture of backgrounds. You had, the hardcore research microbiologists at Rutgers. You had the physicist, and you had also the MBAs. So it was a kind of across the board, and they were not shy about, in the end, they allowed you to do your presentation, but in the end, they'd make it very clear, what is good and what's bad about the designs. And they seem to like our designs for the reasons, being practical and relatively easy to implement.
So it's primarily dissolved solids and bacteria, not a chemical contaminants that you're looking at filtering?
Their filter design, no immediate chemical contaminants except for heavy metals. They were looking for, because we try to learn about what's in their particular soil, what's going to come off of the the agricultural crops, and they were initially concerned with the heavy metals that you might find.
We have water pollution near Bucks County Community College with the Naval Air Station and the PFOS in the groundwater. It's from
Really?
fire extinguisher. They used to just, I guess, every major air base and military base, they kind of managed to pollute the groundwater the same way.
I mean, being up in North Jersey, we're definitely no strangers to water pollution. There were some things that we absolutely could not filter out. For example, New Jersey's water, particularly in central New Jersey, has radiation, elevated radiation levels. And that's something we could not address. It's also something that we figured it probably would not affect them immediately. And then for the sea level rising, that was much harder because the people who designed the competition, they didn't tell us, do you want us to get to the root of the sea level rising or just deal with it after it happens? And we could not get any kind of feedback from them. I guess they wanted it to be as kind of broad as possible, but that we greatly struggled with. And the second year we did the competition this past January, February, March, it was complete chaos. At one point, For the Zoom meeting, it was just me and the advisor were there, no students. And we thought, it's over. We'll just show up. We'll get, hopefully third place if one of our students shows up. And then 2 weeks before the competition, it was a mad dash. And it was extremely hectic. We were able to cobble together a solid team. And then using the model that I came up with, just motivate them, let them know the reality of the situation. The interesting thing is, because we were late competitors, we all resigned ourselves to the fact that we're not going to win. And it actually relaxed us. Like, we're not going to win. We'll come in third place if we're lucky, maybe fourth place. We'll just be happy to be there. And I think that relaxed state, I'm not going to put that in the model, but I think that relaxed state really helped our team. It kind of just relieved a lot of the stress. Is there anything like this at Bucks County?
So Christine has really headed up a number of efforts. I don't know if Deb wants to describe. You might know more of the details than I do.
The list of things that Christine has done is so long, I couldn't even begin to tell you where to start. But we have participated in a number of, as also the only community college competing against some four-year schools and won. I can't, what is the one, Aaron, the one that they went to Washington about? Do you remember?
Oh, I think it's the NSF something. I don't know.
Some kind of NSF security, something or other. But we typically, so Aaron teaches in the science and engineering and physics area, and I'm computer science, and Christine is our engineering coordinator. But we do collaborate quite a bit between the areas, and our students work on projects together quite a bit. She is the one who spearheads that. Typically, I just give my blessing, and then she runs with it. So, but we find, I think in the region, I mean, we're not that far from you. There's so many four-year schools, it can be intimidating, but, I think the community colleges hold their own on a lot of this stuff.
I mean, especially even when it comes to the academic rigor. I mean, there's probably a bigger spectrum at a county college, in terms of the rigor, but or in terms of the student performance. But yeah, we always get good students.
Yeah. And they are very successful when they transfer to the four-year schools. So we know that, they're getting every bit as much, probably more out of, like you said, being in our small classes and knowing us and knowing they can come to our office and get the extra help that they need. And when they get there, I think they have a leg up sometimes in knowing how to get help and advocating for themselves. Aaron,
right now I'm teaching. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We have a STEM learning center that I coordinate, and Aaron sometimes works in there. So we do extra support for the students who need it in our STEM courses, and the students who take advantage of that tend to be the ones who are the most successful.
Right now I'm teaching physics in the summer. And we get a lot of visiting students from the four-year schools. And they tell me,
so do we. Yeah.
Oh. And I always got one come up to me and say, Professor, so at NJIT, they make a 40 a C. Is that the same here?
Oh, my God.
No. No. I'm not curving 30 points.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. No, we have we can't even run enough sections of our online physics in the summer, particularly from Penn State. Because they can't go on to their next engineering year until they've taken physics 1 and 2. I've been interim dean on and off over the last number of years and had to try and staff those classes. And our administration doesn't understand it. They're like, just hire a few people. How many people do you know who can teach calc-based physics online in the summer?
Right.
This many. Not too many. So
the students are great, though. The summer students are really, really very strong, and it's impressive that they're able to accomplish in 6 weeks.
It is.
It's true. I've noticed the same thing. I love teaching in the summer. They know what they're up against, right? In our case, they have 6 weeks, and they're usually pretty good. Actually, usually in the summer, the students are better than the regular semester.
Yeah.
I find my summer grades are A's and F's. That's it.
Two
They either
extremes. Right.
succeed or they don't. There's like hardly anybody in between.
Right. When I put the histogram on the board, I'm like, all right, we got this. Over here, you got 40s and you got 80s for some reason.
Yeah.
I just graded my first lecture exam exactly that. It was a complete bimodal curve. They either literally got a 30 or a 92. Period.
Yeah.
I tell the students, look, what you got to do is the group here, I call them the camp, those in the 40s, you got to do what the other camp is doing. Right? Just mimic that and you'll be good.
Make friends, use your network.
Right.
Absolutely.
Do they?
They do or they don't.
I'm in a very different camp. You guys are all physics, math. I'm on the other part of STEM. I teach anatomy. I'm in the bio camp. But same trends that you guys were just talking about.
And we also get a lot of visiting students in the summer for A&P, particularly because they want to go to nursing school. So that's our vast majority of our A&P students are pre-nursing.
Oh, that's what we say.
And they have to have at least a B to get to nursing school. So they know that.
They need a B?
Yeah, at least for us. To get into our program, they need a B and A.
Oh, I wish. They need a C in our program to move on. I mean, they still have to apply, so that doesn't mean they're going to get in, but the C is the benchmark. If I had my way, it would be a B. But
yeah.
One day.
That when we get the visiting students, they're always surprised at the standards we have at a county college.
Yeah.
They're always like, what? I thought this was going to be an easy A.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then you have to explain to them, if we want this to transfer to the four-year school, it has to be equivalent to the four-year school. This isn't high school, not 13th grade. That's the thing I hate. Right? It's every bit as hard, if not more so, than the courses that they take in the four-year school. My son, Michael, Aaron knows Michael, started off at Temple and then wound up coming back to Bucks for a little while and then going back to Temple. And he said he learned a lot more in the courses that he took at Bucks than the ones that he took in his first 2 years when he was taking his gen eds and his general sciences and stuff at Temple, when he was in a class of 200 students in a lecture hall and didn't know anybody and, had a graduate assistant who, did its best, but whatever. It wasn't a teacher, not the same that they get with community college faculty for sure.
Yeah, I have to explain that to students often. It's like when you're dealing with a Rutgers, you're dealing with an NJIT, it's like they're there for their research. They're there for their grants. They're there for the lab space and having assistants. Like they're not there, or at least it's not their first priority to teach.
Right.
That's not their focus. So it's like at a community college, we teach. That's 100% of our job is teaching.
Yeah.
So when you get that four-year institution, that's not their first priority. Their first priority is publishing.
I always find that difficult is to try to, prepare the students to what they're going to face
Recording
at
is on.
school. And some of it's good, and some of it is just, having to deal with larger classes and teachers who are not going to be there for them as much as they are at a county college. And, some of them believe me. I think a lot of the students, though, they just have to experience it firsthand, and then, they realize that at a county college, significant advantage, small classrooms, one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoyed this very much. Before I head out, any last questions?
Wow, this is a great talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. It was a great presentation. It's always tough to be the last one of the day.
Good luck to everyone.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, for those of you teaching summer, hang in there.
Yeah, you do.
Thanks.
All right, take care, everyone.